In blended families, the emotional landscape is often far more complex than in traditional family structures. When new relationships form, such as stepparents and stepchildren, individuals are thrust into roles that carry weight, expectations, and often emotional baggage from past familial or romantic experiences. These relationships are born out of necessity, not choice, and while love and bonding can absolutely grow over time, the emotional nuances of these connections can be delicate and easily misunderstood. In some cases, the pursuit of familial harmony can create emotional closeness that isn't always clearly defined, especially when the people involved are struggling with loneliness, rejection, or a longing for deeper connection. This environment can become a breeding ground for blurred boundaries, especially when two individuals begin to rely on each other emotionally in a way that steps outside the typical definitions of family roles. In situations where one or both parties in a blended family feel emotionally isolated or unfulfilled, either within their romantic relationship or due to the upheaval of restructuring a family unit, they may unconsciously seek intimacy elsewhere. Sometimes, this intimacy manifests in unexpected ways, such as asking for small favors, initiating long conversations, or offering physical gestures of comfort that seem harmless at first. In these moments, the emotional need for closeness may override the clarity of social norms or ethical lines. For example, a stepparent going through a difficult time might confide in a stepson or stepdaughter, unintentionally creating a bond that takes on an emotionally charged tone. These situations can escalate quickly if boundaries aren't acknowledged and maintained, not because of ill intentions, but because of unmet emotional needs and misinterpreted signals. The role of emotional vulnerability in these dynamics cannot be overstated. When someone is emotionally raw, due to a failing marriage, a sense of rejection, or past trauma, they may not fully recognize the nature of their own actions. They may simply seek kindness or connection, without realizing that their requests or interactions carry emotional weight. On the other side, the stepchild, particularly if they are older and emotionally mature, might also be navigating their own feelings of displacement or a desire for connection with a new parental figure. In that vulnerability, even well-meaning gestures such as a comforting touch, a shoulder to cry on, or simply spending time alone can begin to feel emotionally intimate in a way that confuses both individuals. Over time, these emotionally intimate moments can mimic the dynamics of a romantic relationship, even if no physical contact has occurred. When boundaries begin to blur in this way, secrecy and guilt often enter the picture. Neither party may intend harm, yet they may both sense that something is happening that shouldn't be. This secrecy can heighten the emotional intensity, making the connection feel even more powerful and personal. What might have begun as a simple act, like a massage offered for comfort, can evolve into a symbolic ritual that carries emotional weight far beyond its original intent. In real-life cases, it is often these emotionally charged, secretive exchanges that partners later identify as emotional infidelity. The betrayal may not be physical, but it lies in the intimacy, in the hidden nature of the relationship, and in the sense that someone has been emotionally unfaithful to their spouse or partner. These situations are rarely black and white. The emotional needs that fuel these connections are deeply human and relatable, which makes them all the more dangerous. Without firm boundaries and clear communication, people in blended families may find themselves caught in emotional entanglements that threaten the very relationships they were trying to nurture. Emotional infidelity in these cases is not about lust or intent, but about the profound confusion that arises when emotional needs go unmet, and family roles are not clearly defined or respected. Secrets, guilt, and unspoken needs are at the heart of many real-life infidelity stories, especially those rooted in emotional entanglements rather than outright physical betrayal. These affairs often begin in the silent spaces between what is said and what is felt, moments where vulnerability, emotional neglect, or the desire to be seen create a vacuum that someone else unknowingly or knowingly fills. Unlike overt cheating, emotional infidelity usually grows quietly, often undetected, developing from innocent interactions into something far more complicated. A shared look, a private conversation, or repeated acts of kindness can evolve into deep emotional dependency. The people involved might not even be aware of how far they've drifted from the boundaries of their committed relationships until they are too emotionally invested to easily walk away. Unspoken needs in a relationship, such as the longing to feel desired, validated, or emotionally supported, often go unacknowledged for years. People assume their partner knows what they're missing, or, worse, they convince themselves they should no longer expect those things. Over time, the absence of emotional connection in a primary relationship can leave someone feeling invisible or unwanted. In this space of emotional starvation, even a small act of attention from someone else, whether it's a kind word, an offer to listen, or a gentle touch, can feel like a lifeline. These small moments become addictive, forming a pattern of interaction that neither person may initially recognize as inappropriate, but they begin to share more with each other, emotionally relying on someone outside the committed relationship, and a private world begins to form, one filled with secrets, unspoken understandings, and emotional intimacy that rivals or exceeds the one shared with their partner. The guilt often arrives late, creeping in when the emotional bond has already been deeply established. At first, the person involved might justify their actions by minimizing them, telling themselves it's just talking or just friendship. But over time, the secrecy and the emotional energy being diverted away from the primary relationship begin to weigh heavily. They may start to lie about who they're texting, hide conversations, or omit details of interactions that once seemed harmless. These little acts of concealment are red flags, not just for the partner being deceived, but for the person committing the emotional infidelity, who now finds themselves leading a double emotional life. This duplicity breeds internal conflict. The person may still love their partner, but they also crave the emotional connection they've found elsewhere. This split can be exhausting, creating feelings of shame, confusion, and self-disgust, which only deepen the secrecy and emotional chaos. In many real-life scenarios, these emotional affairs come to light not through confrontation, but through emotional withdrawal. The betrayed partner might sense the shift, a lack of presence, reduced communication, or unexplained emotional distance. They may not know who or what is responsible, but they feel the loss of intimacy and connection, and when the truth does emerge, whether through confession, discovery, or accidental exposure, it often feels just as painful, if not more so, than physical infidelity. That's because emotional cheating involves the most sacred parts of a relationship: trust, vulnerability, and emotional safety. The betrayal is not just in the act, but in the knowledge that someone else was given access to feelings, secrets, and emotional truths that were meant to be shared only within the relationship. These emotional entanglements are further complicated by the fact that they often involve people close to the couple: friends, colleagues, neighbors, or even family members. When this happens, the betrayal is layered, impacting not just the romantic relationship, but also the wider network of trust and social connection. Emotional infidelity, especially when rooted in secrecy and unmet needs, reveals just how fragile human connection can be. It speaks to the quiet, persistent yearning we all have to be deeply known, seen, and cared for, and how easily those desires can lead us into relationships that promise healing, but ultimately fracture the bonds we hold most dear.